Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of Brainscratch. I'm John Lordan. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here today. While true crimers everywhere have been very focused on the quadruple murders in Idaho, which thankfully look like justice is swiftly coming, I found a similar murder struggling to get any attention, with many articles about it starting to disappear and just fall off the internet. Thanks to Web Archive and newspapers.com, we're going to try to re-raise the awareness to this case and see if we can help justice also find these 4 victims. It was 7 years ago this week that newspapers were reporting David Bowie had passed away, dying just 2 days after his 69th birthday after an 18-month battle with cancer. But in the back pages of the Ithaca Journal, there was a different story. A story taking place in Rochester, New York. Rochester firefighters had responded to a fire on Leighton Avenue. It was at a 3-story home that had been converted into a 2-family dwelling. 8 people lived there in total, 2 of them downstairs and 6 shared the upper 2 stories. An occupant called in the fire right before midnight on January 11th, 2016. She had just arrived home to find the front door wide open, no lights on in the house, and smoke. When the fire department showed up, she was waiting outside of the building. The 2-way radio communication from the fire department is available online and details how they didn't think that anyone else was inside and they couldn't even see any flames or fire from outside. They could just see the smoke. As the fire crews entered and worked the fire, they found that it was burning between the 2nd and 3rd floors, mostly contained in a wall. It took them about 15 minutes to put it out, but then they started their search and found out that their initial assumptions might not have been accurate. Let's listen to what command staff heard from the firefighter inside.
I'm reporting possible person inside the house. I've got one person in the attic. He's out here since he's one in the attic. Acknowledged. I've got 3 things. This is going to be a crime scene. Command control, I did not copy. This is going to be a what? I know it's 4 deceased victims. This is going to be a crime scene. Acknowledged. Command is dispatch. Yeah, you're going to need to send RV down here. Looks like this is going to be a crime scene. Yep, we already started them, sir.
They had made a terrible discovery in the attic, and if you listen to the entire audio, you can literally hear these brave men wrestling emotionally with what they've found. Both the firefighter and the operations command team literally sound heartbroken as the discoveries are made. They lock the scene down and shift gears. If this is a crime scene, there's also a good chance that the fire was arson. Rochester police arrive with a quadruple homicide scene to deal with. They immediately towed a car out of the driveway and started reviewing the evidence. Early reports would state that the 4 bodies had clear signs of trauma not related to the fire, and that the victims were tied up in the finished attic space, their mouths covered in duct tape. Investigators would say they're not releasing the worst of the photos, that those are terrible sights that only the firefighters and law enforcement should have to deal with. One TV news reporter who saw a few of the photos from the scene said that even those were far too brutal for television. Numerous reports would say that 3 of the victims had been shot and 1 had been stabbed. But law enforcement spokespeople would also say that there's a lot of misinformation flying around in those news reports. Initially, the victims weren't identified, but authorities took to the media immediately to ask the public for help. Reporters spoke to a man who identified himself as the uncle of one of the victims. David Burrows said victim Michael Adams was his nephew, and David would say, "He's a good kid. He was always on the go all the time. He shouldn't have been in that freaking house." Burrows said he wasn't sure if Adams had moved in or if he was just visiting the location. Reporters also noted that a man showed a photo of a woman to police officers and asked if they knew who was inside the house. He told them that he was trying to get a hold of the woman in the photo, but he declined to identify who he was to the press. It would turn out that there were indeed 2 female victims inside as well. Investigators would learn that the property was owned by a real estate broker and investor named Terrence P. Ryan. He had purchased it 2 years prior through a foreclosure auction. He told the press that his prayers are with the families, but he didn't have much more to add. These 4 homicides would be part of the 42 reported in Rochester that year, a 30% jump from 2015 and the highest rate in the 6 years prior. A few days later, the identities were officially released. The victims were 45-year-old Michael Adams, 28-year-old Michael Royal, 29-year-old Jennifer Leasure, and 22-year-old Lachelle Powell. They had only been living at the home for a short time, possibly even as short as a month, and some reports state that Jennifer Leasure may have also been 1 month pregnant. Michael Adams was a father of 5. His children, ranging in ages from 8 to 20, over 100 people would come to his funeral service at the Pentecostal Power of Deliverance Church. His mother, Yvonne, would say that Michael sometimes befriended people that she wished he would stay away from, but he was a people person, and he wouldn't harm a fly. A soft-spoken, understanding, and very forgiving man, Michael also operated a commercial cleaning business. Janelle Bowman spoke about her connection to victim Michael Royal. He was a very special friend. He was my first boyfriend when we were only 15. We genuinely loved each other. He was one of those people who knew how to nurture a relationship. He made everyone feel special. She also mentioned that he was a father as well, to a 9-year-old girl. Quote, "No daughter at that age should have to grow up without a father." Michael Royal was one of the 2 primary tenants renting the upper levels, the other being his girlfriend, Jennifer Leasure. They rented rooms out to the other people that were living there. Jennifer's obituary states that she loved spending time with her grandparents and was an accomplished athlete, earning a varsity letter in basketball for Brockport High School. Jennifer had just begun a new job as a hairstylist at the A. Cameron Salon and Spa in Webster, New York, where the owner said she was a perfect fit. She had also recently gone back to school. Her friend, Alicia Hayslip, would say she was an amazing person, very outgoing, very happy all the time. She had the craziest laugh. She was a friend when you needed her. Also living there were Michael Royal's mother, Mary, and his aunt, Kimberly. His aunt was dating 45-year-old Michael Adams. Kimberly was at work that night, and Mary was across town visiting her daughter. She was actually the one to come home, finding the door open. She would later say, "I came into the house and smelled smoke. I thought it was the stove burning. I tried to go upstairs, but the flames were too powerful. There was just so much smoke." She then exited the house and called 911. The 2 people that lived downstairs were fortunately not at home that night. Investigator John Brennan would say about Mary, God was with her that night, that she didn't come home an hour or 2 earlier. She could have easily become another victim. She said that Michael Royal and Jennifer were planning on getting married, and that Michael was looking into a dentistry program at a local college. 22-year-old Lachelle Powell was a friend that had recently moved in. She went by the nicknames Little Peanut and Shells. Her ex-girlfriend, Latoya Martinez, says she was a beautiful person who wanted to change the world. Quote, "When she was younger, she used to be tough and hard, but she was a loving and caring person at heart. She always cared about everybody else's feeling but her own. She wanted to make sure that everybody was good. She would give her last if she had it and you needed it." That Thursday, January 14th, 2016, a vigil was held right in front of the home. Neighbors were heartbroken, with some talking about the good people that had been lost and others talking about more losses that happened on Leighton Avenue and in the surrounding area. The people that were gathering broke into a spontaneous singing of Amazing Grace. By the end of the week, Police Chief Michael Simonelli would tell the press that his department was using every resource to solve the murders and would leave no stone unturned. Police were now saying the fire was certainly arson, set to try to cover up the heinous murders. "It's an outrageous and horrific crime," the chief would tell the Star-Gazette. When asked about the official cause of death for each victim, he told the media that the medical examiner hadn't yet provided the final information. An official cause of death for the victims was never publicly released based on what I can find, even as of today. The chief also added that the fire complicated the evidence processing greatly. Quote, "You have to work around structural issues, plus the number of victims. We wanted to make sure that we were very thorough. You have one shot at the crime scene, so we want to make sure we don't miss anything." Unfortunately, that one shot didn't seem to give investigators what they needed for a quick solve on this case. Rochester police would run down hundreds of leads, review hours of surveillance footage, and investigators say a steady stream of tips flowed in, but they were mostly secondhand information that people had heard on the streets or just flat out speculation. One of those points of speculation was that the group of four may have been involved in some form of low-level drug dealing, but investigators note that the level of violence they saw at the scene doesn't seem to fit a conflict resulting from low-level drug dealing. At the one-year anniversary, several family members spoke out to the press, including Jennifer Leasure's father, Francis. He would say, "It's not that I haven't gotten any answers. There are no answers. We have to be patient, but I would like to see closure to this in my lifetime." He also notes that maybe there was another side to Jennifer's life, a side that actually gave him some great concern. Jennifer was the greatest daughter a father could ever have. She was funny. She had a beautiful smile, but there were two sides to her. The side that cost her her life, and then there's the side that we knew of her as her family. Ever since she got out of high school, she was hanging around with some bad people. I just had the gut feeling that one day I would get that phone call, and I got it. Michael Adams' sister Kirsten would say, "I'm angry about it and hurt that there has not been anyone to come forward and say they know what happened. Somebody knows something." Investigator John Brennan, a man with over 30 years of experience, would comment, "We're looking for somebody out there that has that answer, somebody with direct knowledge, somebody who after a year may not be afraid, or maybe has distanced themselves from the individuals who did this." Yes, he said individuals. Investigators seem clear that this was probably more than one person, and if it was, that greatly increases our chances that somebody has said something to someone. Brennan also confirms that law enforcement is buying into one particular theory. Quote, "We believe there might have been some drug involvement, but we're not 100% sure on why this happened." Investigators believe the perpetrators went into the house and took their time doing what they did, possibly up to several hours. It was a cold night, so there weren't many witnesses out on the street, no one to see a vehicle speeding away from the scene, or maybe a vehicle that they didn't recognize. Brennan says they just can't find the tip that gives them a solid connection to a suspect. Quote, "In most murder cases, we have a general idea of who the suspects are. On this one, I don't have any concrete leads. If somebody came forward with direct knowledge that helped us identify a target, we would go after that person like you wouldn't believe." This is an extremely tough case to understand when you don't understand the motive. Was this an attack on the entire group? Or was only one of them primarily the victim and then the others casualties of being there at the wrong place, wrong time? The one thing that sticks out to me is the fact that there's a difference in the murders. We have one of them being knifed, and of course, we all have heard that, it's a more intimate way of killing someone, that it takes a lot of emotions to effectively do that as opposed to using a gun. Does that mean something in this case? If it does, the investigators aren't being clear publicly about that. So it just leaves us in this spot where we don't understand the intent. There appears to be some things that are special about this scene, but investigators aren't saying that. And there is limited coverage because there's really no news. I mean, effectively, we're looking at a crime scene where we don't even really have the cause of deaths identified for all of the victims. We have a sense of what happened. We have a few pieces that kind of leaked early, and then that's been it. And now it's been up to the investigation team. But here we are 7 years later. Investigator Brennan, he's stuck with a case that has no suspects and a nearly infinite amount of possibilities. We just don't know what the motive was, he said. And we don't know for sure which of the victims in that house was the target. He also notes that when the investigation started, the talk on the street was actually problematic. We were getting so many people talking about it in the street that maybe somebody would hear somebody else talking about it and think they were involved. But it seems like now things have changed. Quote, "We aren't even hearing stuff from the street. We need somebody that has direct knowledge of what happened to come forward." He says that that person can be kept confidential and be kept safe. If that person is you, please use the contact details that we have in the description box below to bring justice to these families and this community. I believe a $15,000 reward is still available on this case. Brennan also notes that there are some elements of the crime that are unique, things that only someone that was there or heard directly about it may know, but they're holding on to those details so that they can use them to corroborate any information that comes in. Another investigator on the case, Gary Galetta, says the number of victims and the brutality of this, it's kind of hard to believe it hasn't gained as much attention. For a quadruple murder in this community, it's so rare. That's where we need your help. If you have friends or acquaintances in the area of Rochester, New York, please share this video with them. Investigator Brennan said that he's in regular contact with the families, but is frustrated that he can't give them the answers they're looking for. The families of these 4 victims are great people. Some of them call me once a week, twice a week, once a month just to check up. They're the real victims here. They just went through the holidays without their loved ones. I don't care what kind of activity you're involved in. These 4 people didn't deserve this. As for the people that he's looking for, he's got a clear message for them too. We want them bad. If we find out credible info about who did this, they're done. We'll hunt them down. We're going after them. Mary Royal thinks that Michael's friends may know something. Quote, "If his friends really loved him and cared about him, they should come forward and say something. Nobody is saying anything, and I don't know why." Francis Leasure wrestles with not intervening in Jennifer's life. "If I had to do it all over again, I'd probably be sitting in a jail cell right now. I would have gone down there, handcuffed her, brought her home, and locked her in the closet. That way, she would be alive today, and I'll never forgive myself for not doing that." The house where this happened was renovated and repaired a few months after the tragedy. All the drywall was replaced in the stairwell, and the previously finished attic space where the murders occurred was completely gutted and converted back into just storage space. It's reported that the downstairs family moved out very soon after the tragedy. It seems as though life goes on, but not for Michael Adams, Michael Royal, Jennifer Leasure, or Lachelle Powell. And the lives of their families and friends have also been changed forever. Thank you, Ithaca Journal, Democrat and Chronicle, the Star Gazette, WHEC News 10, WHAM 13, the MCFW YouTube channel, RochesterFirst.com, and SpectrumLocalNews.com for information contributing to today's story. I'd like to also thank new patron Bernice Walton and say thank you to Jeanette Newell for increasing her pledge. Since 2015, we've always run limited commercial ads here for the benefit of the viewers and the families we're trying to help. Obviously, we can't do that without support. If you'd like to help, please visit LordanArts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee like Tara S. recently did. We really appreciate your support on our mission to run as few ads as possible and help as many cases as we can. Please join us again on Monday for a brand new episode of Case Cracked right here on the LordanArts channel.